Hello everyone, it's Andrzej Krzywda from Arkency, and today's topic is a bit visionary and futuristic, but let me explain domain-driven design as a low-code. I see this chronology of evolution in programming, like we start from CRUD, this is where all of us are, so actually I should show it here. And then I see that there's an improvement to go into domain-driven design, but let's not get too much attached to the DDD shortcut or buzzword. It's all about representing business in code. So that's what I mean. And then the step forward is low code. So we will focus on the last transition, but let me explain the first transition as well. So CRUD is basically representing the database in the code, right? So it leaks a lot, right? So what tables we have is seen in our objects or functions or whatever, and there is a lot like it's a leaking abstraction, sorry. While domain-driven design is about business in the code. So it's completely different because here we focus more on the behavior, on the flow of information, without really focusing on the data tables below, actually without thinking about them, like not really. What is low code? Low code is the concept of generating applications. So basically you can imagine someone who is not really necessarily technical, who can take some platform and just click around, or maybe low code as in you can write some code. So you can think about Ruby on Rails as low code for web development, where Rails generates all the structure of the application for us, and then we just fill the gaps with CRUD code usually. Actually, as in everything in our industry, low code is just a new name for old concepts, the same with domain-driven design or with CRUDs. Here, low code was called model-driven architecture back like 20 years ago when I started my programming career. Basically, model-driven architecture was about drawing diagrams, using some code, some tools, sorry, and then generate the code and then just adjust the code base. Previously, it was called also fourth generation languages. Again, evolution in programming, so from CRUD through DDD to low code. I believe we don't really do domain-driven design, even though it's actually proved already, it's good, it results in good code. But you know, the whole chart of adoption of technology right now in domain-driven design, we are just at the beginning, even though it's not a new concept. So the adoption is not super high, and it also differs among different technologies. I believe it might be adopted more in .NET, for example, than in Ruby, but we do our best to promote it in Ruby too. And my claim is that domain-driven design is hard because we developers don't get business. So let's start with this because this is very important. And business is simple, obviously, it's profit. If it's not profit, then probably we talk about some charity. And the idea of profit is buy cheaper and sell with some margin, where the margin gives you more money than the cost. That's the most basic definition of business. But where domain-driven design enters, I will try to explain it like in the shortest possible way, like domain-driven design in the most basic way possible. So I will skip all the noise and I will just focus on what's most valuable in domain-driven design and in the techniques which are around, like CQRS, event-driven, and event sourcing. So okay, let's start. Domain-driven design is basically accepting the fact that we have more than one module in our system, that there are actually many business modules, and they are isolated, they are bounded, they have boundaries between them. So they don't talk to each other usually, and they don't know about the database below them. They may share the database, but only at the physical level. The tables don't actually talk to each other as well. So that's domain-driven design. All the other things, value objects, aggregates, this is really details, not relevant. It's like the remaining 1%. 99% is about business modules, and we will get to them later. Okay, what CQRS adds, let's even forget about what it means as a concept. This is the most important thing, is that the CQRS says, okay, DDD is right, there are business modules, and they say, but some of those modules are actually read models, so they are more like for querying the data, and they are about reports usually, Okay, so that's one thing, report. So CQRS says, okay, DDD is right, but then we have something else. And CQRS is also introducing the concept of commands. That's the second thing. So they can say, and they're a lot about events, so they can say, hey, every business model can have this commands as input and events as output, right? That's a very simple concept. So we just say, we publish, we call a command, and then we return a number of events. It sounds a bit functional as well. Then what is event-driven in this ecosystem? Event-driven means that changes are published from those business modules. So if we say you can't easily query business modules because they are bounded and they have clear boundaries, and their output is events, it means that every change in this within this business model can be published as an event, actually should be, and then all the other places can somehow react. And actually, if we have those business models put like this, then something on top of them actually know about those events and know how to react to this event and which other bounded context to call. So bounded context, business module, there are synonyms for me at this level. And then we have event sourcing. And event sourcing really, actually, most developers focus on that a lot. And it is because it's a super important concept. But in this high-level explanation, it's basically benefiting from the fact that if every change is captured as an event, then it means we don't really need the ORM, we don't need the data tables below them. We can build each object, order, user, customer, whatever, from the events. That's all. So that's basically all the concepts. And CRUD is the lowest we can do. This is the lowest expectation that business can get from the developers. It basically means, hey, if we provide this form on the web, then please display the right data on the report somewhere. And additionally, maybe the form can be validated. So that's what CRUD is useful for, right? You can just call product.create and validate the values, and then product.all, and you can retrieve those values. So nothing really about behavior apart from simple validations. I believe we can do better than CRUD, and you can hear from my voice that I'm not a huge fan of CRUD. But let me present you with a business model, which was actually is based on an example of how my dad started business in Poland in the 80s, back when it was still a communistic country. Actually, my dad, what he did was one of the rare legal things you can do as a private entrepreneur. There was no such thing as private companies, but actually you could trade apples and vegetables, and that was allowed. So what my dad did was he traveled between two different towns, and he bought apples in one place and sold them in another place with some profit. The most basic business you can make. And because in Poland, ruled by the communists, there was like no production ever. So there was, all the shops were empty, all the shelves were empty. So everyone demanded any kind of product because there was nothing on the market. So that was easy to make any kind of business. You could implement the system to support or to watch this kind of business, obviously artificially here, by having this product.create. So with a CRUD, we have just a name of the product, amount, and some price. And then when we make a sale, we just decrease the amount. That would work, right? So that would be the easiest way to actually represent what my dad did in the code base. However, you can think now how many business modules, how many business departments were there, even though it could be represented as one database table and one CRUD. You can now, this is like an exercise for you, how many business modules you think are there. So probably you could start that there was a sales department and maybe something else. I will leave it for you. And then at the end, you will see how many of business departments we have counted here. So the first one is about logistics, right? So there was this concept that my dad needed a truck to get the apples from one place to another. So this is like a plan of traveling, a trip with a truck, ensuring that the truck is, working, and we can get from home to the place where they supply us with the apples, and then we get to the place where we can sell the apples. So this could be one part of this business module. So it's called module logistics. We have 3 commands: prepare the truck, set destination, assign stop. There could be more. I'm just showing them as an example. And what is important to understand in domain-driven design and bounded context and business modules is that you're almost blind at any other world which is happening outside of it. So in logistics, you care about that you go somewhere, how you get there, but you don't really care about what exactly you are taking from one place to another, or what is the price of this, or whether it was paid or not, right? So for example, as a driver, you don't care. This is not your job. This is not your vocabulary. This is not your word. And this is exactly what domain-driven design is. You have like this concurrently living different words, different like sets of abstractions, and they don't care about each other that much because we will configure them at the top. So that's logistics. Maybe there was a trip, so the trip could be represented at 3 different states. The trip can be planned, in progress, and completed. The actual implementation could be like that. It could be a bit different. So you just represent a state machine in the code base, whichever way you like. You can do it like here, that you represent each state as an object. You can see there is nothing about database tables. You don't even think about how those trips are represented in the database tables, because they will be not represented as database tables. They will be represented as events. So let's switch to another bounded context, another business module here, which is supplies. We already imagine that we have to buy those apples from the guy who has them. We can agree on the price, and then we are supplied with the apples, right? So the concept of supplies is very important in almost every project you work on. And by the way, when I talk about those bounded contexts, please think how maybe those concepts are somehow existing in your current project. Maybe not, but probably they are. If you sell or offer anything online, it has to be supplied. So maybe you have a supply business module. So here we have actually an example where we show you a command: choose supplier, and the supplier chosen. Right. So this is what my dad did. He explicitly decided, okay, where do I go for the apples? And then when he decided, okay, this guy offers the best price for the best quality, I will choose them. So supplier chosen is the fact in the business. There is also quality assurance. So when my dad goes to the supplier, he takes one apple, he tries them, bites it, and he says, okay, it's a good quality or not, and then he rejects those apples. So yeah, product verified. In the quality assurance world, we don't care if it's an apple or something else. We just say product was verified, for example. So that's an event, right? We know that the apple was good, and then based on those events, you can, in the supply world, say, yes, we choose this supplier, right? So you can see now how this can be coordinated. We'll get there. Then we have the concept of inventory, and this is funny in this example where my dad was simply taking a truck from one place to another. There was no real storage. There was no real building to store the products, the apples. It was just taking the apples from one place to another. However, virtually you can imagine that the truck was an inventory, right? It was a very basic inventory, but it was an inventory. So we had those apples there. This is actually taken a screenshot from a real code base that I will link to in the description. So one of the bounded contexts is inventory. You can see that there is a concept of stock, of reservation, of canceling reservation, completing. So this is a model where inventory, you could say, when you start an order, you can say, make a reservation, right? So this is not an ordering bounded context. It has no idea about orders, but it knows that there are some reservations, right? Because when you start ordering, maybe you want to lock those products for the people who want to order the stuff. This is an example inventory entry. So it could be also called product. Again, it's a state machine, but just implemented differently. So it can be that the stock level, the product is supplied, it is dispatched, it is reserved, and so on. And we see the publishing of those events being part of this aggregate. So here we use the pattern of aggregate root, where we're mixing the business logic together with publishing the events. Oh, sorry, this is left in Polish, the title, so it says domains and the evolution of business, as you can guess. So actually, if we imagine this business of my dad being growing over time, and from a truck, we would grow into having actually some buildings. And actually, this is what happened. It was our family business. I just called it krzywda trade based on our name, but it was called differently. However, in the end, the evolution of my dad's business was that it started with a truck. Then we've had a single shop, single store in a small town, where my dad went to those people to get vegetables or apples, and then my mom sold it in this town, in this small building, in this small groceries store. So it was one such thing. But then my dad actually taught other people how to have those grocery stores in other towns. Remember, it was a communistic times in Poland. Such private things didn't exist, so they have to start from scratch. And then my dad actually understood that his business model is better when he is supplying the other shops instead of running our own small shop. So it was a better business. And also this was like this core domain from my father. He was really good at quality assurance, ensuring the products are good, and choosing the suppliers. Really, that was the main two foundations of this whole business. But in the end, long story short, it grew to actually 4 different locations of what was called in Poland hurtownia, and I'm not sure how to call it in English, but basically it was a supplier of products for other stores, but not really the producer, right? So we were like a proxy between. And we've had a concept of CRM, finances, inventory, legal, logistics, ordering, and so on. So actually there's 11, I think, 11 business departments here. And they are kind of configured using business processes. I'm going to show you in a minute. But actually, even when it was still a truck, in a way, those 11 departments were also there. They was just all represented by one person, my dad. In the end, the company had 50 people. Okay, so let's talk about processes, because this is the clue. This is how you actually configure the bounded context together. And then you tell them how they cooperate. So obviously, when it's just many roles in one person, in my dad, there was really all the cooperation and configuration is happening in a mind of one person. But when you start to grow a company and you need to delegate more and you need to hire people to help you with this business, obviously you have to somehow describe how we should work together. So you kind of put those processes out of your head and you create an explicit business processes. But how do we do it in the code base? Exactly, it's the same, because in domain-driven design, we actually follow very closely what is happening in the business. So let's try to translate those business concepts. So, but by the way, this is a book very popular among entrepreneurs. I read this book. It's actually targeting small entrepreneurs. And this book is about domain-driven design much better than other domain-driven design books, without even mentioning domain-driven design, because it tells you a lot about how to be one-person business and grow and delegate, and not to be like always there because you have no employees, no team behind you. And they describe those different departments and different roles and how the processes are created. This is really a book about domain-driven design, the best book about domain-driven design. This is a very low-level process which coordinates just 2 or maybe 3 bounded contexts, and it's actually about refunds. So what happens when we have a refund in our business? So a customer claims that the product is bad quality, and we need to decide what to do. We probably refund. So we give the money back to the customer. That would be the default scenario. But here we also check that maybe the person, the customer who claimed the refund, maybe he was already warned because he already had some previous refunds, and maybe we told him already, if you don't like our products over and over again, maybe just stop buying from us, right? Maybe we are not delivering to your needs. But so maybe I can actually start detecting that this is a scam, and maybe we want to check the legal stuff. So check with our lawyer whether we can do something about it, and maybe they shouldn't keep trying to refund, right? So we have customer word from scam. This sounds like an event coming from the CRM department, and we need to say legal, please verify the case. So we send a command. So we send it to the legal business department, right? So you can see the refunds, CRM and legals being coordinated with this very basic process. And now we have a bigger process, which is exactly describing what I told you about getting the trip. Let's call it the Apple's trip. And we just say, okay, we just serialize. It's like a transaction script. So we say those commands one after another. So prepare the truck before we go, choose the supplier, verify the product when you are trying the apples, and then supply the product. So move them on truck, move to the next stop, so we're to the place where we sold the apples, and then take the people who are around and sell them, because in 80s in Poland everyone wanted to buy everything because there was nothing on the market. And then you go back home and then you calculate the profit. Very simple, coordinating many different domains. There are obviously events after each stop. Those events trigger some new next steps. So this is a very simplistic way of describing this flow. And you can see on the left, actually this is not the full list, the list of domains that were involved in here, so not the full 11, but just a subset. And on the right you can see actually 5, but there should be six bounded context business modules, which are also used in the Arkency Ecommerce repository, so the sample application to RailsÓventStore, which is mostly targeting to sell ebooks online, because that's what Arkency does. And the thing is to notice that actually those domains are the same. And this is one of my claims today, or hypothesis, that in many of our projects we have the same business modules, but they are sometimes hidden behind the specifics of the business. But we all have CRM, we all have ordering, we all have payments, pricing, catalog, and so on and so on. So it's very, very similar, and maybe there is some potential for reusability. But someone can say, Andrzej, but my juniors don't get domain-driven design. So even though you sound convincing here, maybe I'm not. My juniors in my team will not get domain-driven design. And my answer is that if we think about domain-driven design in the way that many people think, so all the tactical patterns, the aggregates, value objects, which is really less relevant, then yes, it's complicated. Maybe those juniors need some time to learn it. But if we start smart, then we can say juniors can handle read models, for example. So there are those reports, which are basically a function of where the input is a list of events and the output is a data structure, a report, maybe JSON. Then juniors can actually handle it very well. It's very, very basic stuff, right? You can teach them this in 1 hour, and then they will be able to maintain those read models if you like them, like if you like to put ownership on such modules. However, I would go with collective ownership even with juniors, because if the business models are decoupled and isolated and they are bounded, it's easier for them to understand inventory on their own, right? Because instead, what's the alternative? The alternative is that you have this CRUD application where those concepts are not separated. It means at some levels they are coupled together, and then you have a flow of very deeply embedded if statements, and then you have really large classes, and then those juniors have to get it, and I would say this is more difficult for them. That's my my hypothesis. But let's go deeper, and I already mentioned the concept of reusability, and in the title we said it will be about low code. And low code in the end is about reusability. So let's see what we can do about those business modules, where we can get it further. So low code would be about generating applications from features. So let's imagine we have a concept of a feature, and I will show you how we started documenting those features in Notion. Maybe you know Notion. Notion is like a wiki combined with a database. So you can say that one page represents something, but it also relates to other pages. So it's like a relational database. And we used it at the start to document our Arkency Ecommerce project, and document certain bounded contexts, events, commands, processes, read models, and then we also started using them for explaining what are features, to declare the features. But in the end, it will be useful. But here we are entering the academical part of this presentation, where not all the concept has been proven yet, right? So we already have those kind of reusable bounded contexts. I already have tried to reuse them in some very, very trivial scenarios. But this is the part where, when we talk about generating, it's still like in this verification process. So let's just keep that in mind. However, I really believe this is possible. I just need to have more time to actually prove it. So this is one page in Notion. You can see we have ebooks e-commerce application. So this is a page which actually represents an application to be created. Let's imagine this. And we say we want to sell ebooks, so we just want a simple cart feature, a waitlist feature, and favorite products feature. There will be more, but just for the demonstration need here. So very simple features, right? The way to choose those features is that we actually have a longer list and we just check box which feature we want. But I hope you see it. You can see that there's a bounded context and that it can belong to many bounded contexts, that there are some read models, some reports. So a waitlist is actually belonging to, actually requires events from catalog and CRM, and it will be shown on product page on product list. So each feature can be like, can depend on bounded context and actually can bring some read models, right? So that's the relations in this concept of features. And this is a feature page. So you can see exactly bounded context, catalog and CRM, read models, product page, product waitlist, comments. There will be more, but let's say notify when available. So a waitlist is basically you are saying, I really want this book at some point when it's available. So please notify me as a customer. Yeah, and there is some description, which is mostly for people use. Yes, and then we have like an event, so client notified about availability. So when the product became available in the catalog, we know that it is available for sale. Then we notify the client, so we take the client info from CRM and then we send an email probably. So okay, let me just go back. So you can see that those concepts like events, commands, bounded context, read models, it can be like configured, maybe using Notion UI, maybe using command line, whatever, but you can imagine how those projects can be actually generated, scaffolded, similarly as a Rails application, how it is created and scaffolded. So that's our goal. That's our goal with this whole project. So I will keep you up to date how it's going. This is, again, we are still at this academical process. But again, what if we are deep in legacy and generating new applications is really, for us, it's like science fiction. We just want to decouple what is there already. And there are many strategies. And today, given that we focus on business modules, I want to focus on one most important strategy. Basically, the idea is don't change the existing code because it's probably a mess. It's a spaghetti code. But you can you kind of can assume using tests that, okay, the result of such and such steps is that this mess of code reduces the amount of product in the end because it's a sale or it's an order. So you can take the consequences from one business module. So okay, reducing the amount of products is an inventory concept. So you create an inventory bounded context. Maybe you copy and paste our code. It's free, so you can use it. Or you just implement it on your own and you just say, okay, in inventory, you just say, okay, the stock level changed or the product was bought or something like that, or the product disappeared or something like that from the inventory. And in the tests, you can just run your existing code, which is unchanged. And then you create the module and then you try to run it concurrently, and you should expect that the same what has changed in the database table in your current CRUD code base, you can expect that it's actually equivalent to what is happening in the events. And when it's happening in the events, you can react to those events and create read models that are in use in your application using new database tables only related to this read model. So you create a data structure basically. And then if you do it step by step, basically at the end, you can say, actually, I have the inventory created, all the read models are updated accordingly. Or you can create new read models, or you can actually treat your existing database tables as read models. And then you make a switch and you remove all the changes in the in the amount columns. And you remove the code responsible for that, and you actually run the command through your inventory module, and at the end the result should be the same because you trust it with your test. Obviously you need to test it and so on, but that's a strategy that will work for you. If you want to learn more about those concepts, I will, in the description, there's a link to our repository, which it all started actually as a sample application to RailsÓventStore, and now we are in the process of renaming, rebranding it into Arkency Ecommerce. And the concept is to bring you open source, free to use, bounded context business modules, maybe to treat them as libraries, but more likely as treat it as a place, almost like a Stack Overflow. Just copy and paste the code into your application. It comes with tests. Or maybe you just treat it as inspiration. Maybe you are not working with Ruby and you can just get inspired and create a very similar structure, very similar aggregates, or very similar ways of treating commands and events. It's very difficult to create such bounded context working for everyone, so it's not really the goal. It's more like to show you how those bounded contexts can be bounded, isolated, and then how they can be configured to work together. So hopefully that's the way you can try to think about your application, and it's more in line with thinking about that you are working actually on a product line. So you just configure those little bounded contexts together. So you can find it on GitHub, RailsÓventStore, CQRS sample with Res. A clickable link will be in the description. And with that, I thank you for your attention, and let me know in the comments if you have any questions. Thank you.